All right, so we're excited to kick off our panel on the space economy and UCLA's long history in space exploration. Joining me on the panel is Jeff Scheinrock, Assistant Dean and Faculty Director of the MBA Applied Management Programs at UCLA Anderson School of Management.
I'm good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for joining early your time. So I wonder if you could start us by giving us a kind of big picture view of UCLA's long history in supporting NASA and space missions.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable, actually. UCLA has been involved with the space program since 1957, when Joseph Kaplan of UCLA was one of the organizers of the International Geophysical Committee, and he headed the U.S. committee. They've been involved in space exploration and flew a series of search coil magnetometers on the orbiting geophysical observatory, and they also flew floodgate magnetometers on the application technology satellite and the air traffic systems. They also were on Apollo 15 and 16 sub-satellites, and they participated in the Pioneer and Voyager programs. They had involvement in the Cassini mission for Saturn, the Juno mission to Jupiter, the Venus Express to Venus, and also InSight to Mars. So long history, a lot of participation in the U.S. space program.
Now, maybe for some folks that are watching, they're probably thinking, how come I don't really associate UCLA with NASA and some of the space programs? And given the fact that they've actually been involved, since as early as the Kennedy days, right?
That is correct. It is, to be fully transparent, I don't think the UCLA Space Institute has done a good job of informing the public of what they've accomplished over the years, and that is what we're trying to change now. The engineering departments who make up the UCLA Space Institute reached out to UCLA Anderson, which is graduate school of management at UCLA, and trying to collaborate to try to bring a lot of the technical ideas that come through the engineering group at UCLA to commercialization. And this is something that we've done in two other programs. We did it with the medical school, with the biodesign business creation program. We're in our third year and it brought out some really interesting technology. And we kicked off this month in October, a program with the Institute of Carbon Management over in the engineering school with Gaurav Sant, who won the X Prize for carbon emission mitigation. And we have our first class that started in the fall quarter at UCLA that has 30 engineering students and 30 business graduate students. And they're working on projects, and they will then go into a program that I run. It's called the Business Creation Program, and try to bring those forward to get funding and try to commercialize it. So UCLA has made a really big effort recently. I'm the liaison with UCLA Anderson, with the UCLA Space Institute, and we're going to change the world. How's that?
Very exciting indeed. Now, many schools from the likes of, let's say, MIT, Caltech, Stanford, and the likes have for many years been, successfully, some others maybe better than others, perhaps, commercializing a lot of the IP and R&D that's being developed at those institutions, but also in conjunction with government entities like DARPA, DOE, DOD, and so forth. How are some of the programs that you referenced, like the medical school and the carbon management, how are those going, and how do those programs inform you as well as others on the space engineering side of how to proceed so that you can have actually more sustainable commercialization and that transition to startups?
So UCLA has a group called the Technology Development Group, which licenses all the IP that comes out across the university. And they've had a great deal of success, especially in engineering. The founders of Broadcom came out of UCLA, and they've licensed a lot of biotech and medical devices that have gone on to become very large companies. We started the biodesign business creation program 3 years ago, and we've had a great deal of success. I think part of the reason that we're doing more and more of this is we are collaborating, and the technology development group, which handles the IP, has a dedicated resource for each of these areas, and there is one in the space for UCLA Space Institute, and that we kicked off about 8 months ago. We had a session that was almost 1,000 people attended it in person or through Zoom, and it was like the coming out party, trying to inform the community what UCLA is doing in space. So I think having dedicated resources, having the schools, the engineering, medical, carbon emissions, I mentioned that, the Institute of Carbon Management, working closely with our Dean Tony Bernardo at Anderson. One of his visions is to collaborate more and more. I think a lot of universities, academia, I'm not an academic, so you can probably tell. Academia is they operate strangely. Everybody's got their own goals and objectives, and I don't think we've communicated well in the past. I think that's changing now very rapidly. And so we have had success and in the other programs, and this is a new program with the Space Institute, and I think you'll hear a lot about it in the future. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that answers your question.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I want to talk about the difference between private versus public. And as one of the largest public institution, are there some challenges that's unique to public that isn't necessarily there for private institutions like, say, Carnegie Mellon and MIT and others?
Yeah, I'm probably not the right person to talk about the differences. I do know that UCLA receives well over $1 billion a year in US federal grants for technology. We're one of the top universities in the country. Because of that, we have some rules and things that we have to follow that I think some private universities don't have to follow. We work very, very, being in Southern California, we have Caltech, we have JPL, and as later on in this panel, aerospace corporations near us also. We collaborate with them, and I think we just have to follow certain federal guidelines because of the government grants that helps fund some of the research that we do, that some of the private institutions probably don't have those, have to follow those. So I don't have the detailed knowledge of the differences, but hopefully that gives you a little idea of what we do and how we do it.
Now, you mentioned that there was this, let's call it a kickoff for the UCLA Space Institute. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about what that is and what it actually encompasses and the different types of engineering schools that are involved in that program.
Well, all of the engineering departments and schools, the gentleman running it is from the physical sciences, but they work with all the other different engineering departments. The kickoff event, I actually was on a panel, the only non-technical panel. What they did at this event, and if you go to the UCLA Space Institute site, I think there's a recording you can watch, which basically highlighted our top professors and the technology that they're working on currently in the space program and in the future. And so they highlighted all the technology. The interesting part and the reason that I'm enjoying this is my background. Back in the late 80s, 90s, I did work on trying to commercialize certain things. I was the vice chairman of a company called Kistler Aerospace that actually raised over $1 billion to try to use reusable launching reusable vehicle for low Earth orbit, and then went on to work with NASA on the X-33 and the Venture Star program. The Venture Star program was going to be the program that replaced the space shuttle when they. It didn't work because the X-33, actually the technology was too advanced, so we never got to the Venture Star program. And I was part of the group that worked with NASA to do the RFP that SpaceX won. So NASA, really wanted to work on commercialization of space. So this event that we had highlighted the technologies that are coming out, working currently in the space program, and new technologies that we're hoping to commercialize. And it was interesting because, being a non-technical person, when we have our advisory board meetings, I actually don't understand a lot of the stuff the professors talk about. But then when we get to business models and trying to recruit talent, which we will get into, I'm sure, in this discussion, that sort of goes over their heads. So it's a really good mix of the technical and the business. And that's what we tried to showcase at the event that we had. We are planning, hopefully, to do in early 2023. UCLA is known for their forecasting, for economic forecasting, and we're planning now to do one on the space economy in Southern California and bring in all the companies. As you know, most of the entrepreneurial companies have a location in Southern California, and also all the large aerospace corporations.
Mm-hmm. Just a Jason question, and then we'll come back to the Space Institute, is we have seen a lot of larger corporations leaving California, in some cases to Texas, as an example. And I wonder if that climate is going to potentially change for the aerospace and the space sector in the San Diego, Los Angeles area, or you foresee that it will continue to be strong?
I think it will continue to be strong. And probably the biggest thing that UCLA Space Institute is trying to do is to be known for creating the talent, the PhD students, the master students. We can do a much better job of bringing in people who have visions and passions to be the leaders in the future. Again, we haven't communicated well to the outside community, and that's changing now. The reason the companies are moving out of California is most people, I don't know who the audience is on this session, but the taxes in California are outrageous. There are states that don't have state income tax. The business environment here is not that friendly. And it's interesting because we have Silicon Valley and all the high-tech companies. I do not foresee Southern California losing more and more companies. I think companies may open up facilities elsewhere because it's a lot less capital it's capital efficient not to build big facilities here because of the tax structure and some of the regulatory things that our state has. But we're not going to lose the lead. We'll be a leader for the United States in the space area, I think, for the foreseeable, hopefully forever, but it's not going to change in the near term.
Good to hear that. Going back to the UCLA Space Institute, if you can share again, recognizing some of this is probably still in the works, but the general methodology by which certain research or papers or maybe patents that professors and the faculty and TAs, the PhD students are developing, how that gets systematically filtered and who gets to decide what's worthy of pursuing for commercialization, and then handing it over to either the Anderson Business School side or the venture side or the incubator accelerator side, for instance, and then taking it further to funding and maturization?
Well, I think the professors who work with, first of all, the UCLA Space Institute is hiring an executive director that will focus on bringing in funds to help fund research for the PhD and the master's students in the engineering schools. I think the professors who work and then working with the technology development group will determine, and then also working with the UCLA Anderson students on the commercialization side and the business model side. The research that we do and the collaboration that we do we first have to make sure that the technology is sound, solid, and we have the expertise to do that on the technical side. Where the Anderson students come in, and me and other professors at Anderson working with the engineering professors, we need to, one, come up and make sure that there's a market that's going to be big enough that we'll be able to, the technology will come out of, there will be great technology. The question is can we commercialize it, raise the money to commercialize it, and is there a market big enough? I think we're going to see a lot of future development with healthcare in space, with energy in space, and because of what's being socially responsible, being a very hot topic now. I think working with the technology group, which licenses the technology, and us determining whether there is going to be a market and a way to make money. Is the bottom line is, one, we want to help humanity. We want to help solve the problems that the world has, but we also, we're capitalists. We also want to make money. So we need to be able to prove, and that's where the collaboration really comes together, that there is a way to fund and bring great ideas in the future. Now, these are, this isn't going to happen overnight. It'll take years, but you have to start somewhere. So now we're focused on it. We have a lot of talent. And I believe if it's doable, UCLA will be able to do it.
So pragmatically speaking, I'm just trying to understand, because Columbia and many other schools have a very proactive approach to commercializing some of these things. And sometimes it's driven by the engineering schools. In other cases, it's actually the business students maybe looking through a database of certain patents or IP and trying to ascertain what the potential economic benefit or market potential might be. So trying to get a sense in terms of how would either the technical side or the business side go about figuring out that fit first before they decide, okay, what's that business case?
Well, we have to work with the technical folks to make sure that what they're trying to solve for is doable. And then the business side of this working with our technology development group, will approach the investment community. There are a ton of venture capitalists all over the world, as you know. You're one of them, and one of the better ones, I have to say. We're doing a better job of reaching out to them, finding out what they're interested in, what they will back, and what are the requirements for them to back. And that's what we have to prove. The school is, again, going to be raising money and is raising money, but they want to raise additional money in order to have the funds to give, what's the right word? And not endowments, but to give like fellowships to support the technical folks in developing this. I mean, everything comes down to money. We don't have UCLA, a lot of schools, Harvard, MIT, Stanford, they have huge endowments, so they can support. We need to raise money from the community. And that was part of the reason for the Space Institute coming out party, let's say, to have people, not only investors, but people in the community that are either angel investors, family offices, or just have a passion to donate money so that we can attract more students and brighter students, hopefully, to develop these technologies. The commercialization of space, as you know, is expensive, and so you're going to have something that will attract the investors to bring in the money to be able to accomplish things like SpaceX is doing. And I mean, you see all the new companies that are coming up, and you can see who's starting a lot of these. Branson with Virgin, Bezos with Blue Origin. It takes people who have deep pockets and who can raise additional funds. But it's going to be, it's not just one group. It's got to be many groups that come together. But it's going to come down to the people and the quality of the people. And if we can bring in the best talent, and then we can show the JPL, Northrop, Boeing, Lockheed, that we have that talent, then we'll work much closer with them as we go forward also. But it's going to take a group of people to bring these to fruition, to make that happen.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. Now, typically in a academic to private sector commercialization is that there's a lot of subsidizing. Let's say, for example, I mentioned DARPA and DoD, for example, as well as other types of grants that provide non-dilutive types of support to incubate certain concepts or applicable patents, let's say. But then that's not necessarily ready for prime time for VCs to come in at that point. There's still more funding and more development that needs to happen outside of a lab environment. And that's where the venture incubator or accelerator comes in. Are you able to talk about UCLA's accelerator and what they're doing to kind of meet that intermediate step before they can actually go out and start to look to angels and early stage VCs?
There are several UCLA accelerators and or incubators. Different people define the things differently. We have one at Anderson. There is one in our engineering school, CNSI, which is it's five floors. It's got wet labs, dry labs. I mean, very, very technical, very, very impressive. So what they do is, if you're a UCLA person, they will supply expertise working with industry players and all the equipment in the lab space at cost, but it does cost. If you're outside of UCLA, it's open to anybody. They have to pay market rates to use the facilities, but it is state of the art. So we have the infrastructure to be able to help the technology along. On the Anderson side, and I just met with CNSI and their leadership about 4 weeks ago. And what we talked about is where we can really help is we have probably closer relationships with the venture capital firms and some of the other parts of the school. So we're going to try to work much closer together to find out, clarify clearer which VCs will invest in this area, and there are several, and bring them into the school, let them know what we're doing, hear what they're looking for, and so that we can get their ideas also and try to develop technologies that will meet their needs. There's no shortage of money. There's a ton of money. The economic environment right now is making it a little harder or more difficult, and takes longer to raise funds. And I think valuations are lower now because of what's happening. But there is no shortage of money. So I think at Anderson, monthly we bring in venture capitalists to speak to the students, to have them review the ideas that are going through our accelerator. It's open to all across campus. So we have projects from the medical school, the engineering school, and all the schools of public policy. There's a variety of projects that are being developed at the Anderson Accelerator. And then we're the facilitator that brings in the players. Again, no shortage of money at all. And having, raised money for several space ideas and products and services that have come out, it is very doable. But again, it takes time, focus, and that's why I think you need to build a team that has both the business and the technical side.
Just briefly, are you able to share some of the UC Anderson's programs and how that relates to supporting the UCLA Space Institute?
Well, so I run the master thesis programs. UCLA is a little different. There is no master thesis that's written. So we have different cohorts of students. We have the full-time students. We have fully employed students that go through a 3-year program that come in the evenings and weekends. We have executive MBA students. We also have our global executive MBAs that we work with the University of Singapore. Each of these programs, so students, we recruit companies. We've done projects for Northrop. We've done projects for actually the UCLA Space Institute. We've tried to get SpaceX. They haven't applied yet, but we go out and bring projects in where the students, for their master thesis, will work with commercial companies and also nonprofits, think tanks, to solve or help them with tough issues that they don't have the internal resources. The students work on this for roughly 2,000 hours over 6 months, and they then deliver the projects to the companies. The companies pay for this. We've been doing it for 55 years for the full-time program. This year, in the programs, I get all the students in the year they graduate. So this year I have just under 1,000 students in all these cohorts. One of them is a global program for our fully employed students. And so we bring in projects from, all the projects in that program come from companies around the world. We work with, just about every country, but we source companies from all industries, including the space industry and other technologies that go into potentially technology that comes out of the Space Institute or the engineering school. So the students get a real world experience working with companies from around the world, all shapes and sizes. We did do a project, I can say, I can't go into it because it was under very heavy NDA. So these companies, they pay for this and they own the data. But we did do a very top secret, I'll call it, project for Northrop. And they were so impressed, they had the students come and present to the board of directors, a few years ago with the outcome. A lot of the companies that we work with, this is a little off topic, but we've worked with major corporations, helping them figure out what IP they have. You'd be surprised that some of the largest corporations in the world don't have a good handle on the intellectual property that comes into their organizations. And so we've had several projects where the students, they open up their IP portfolio and the students will pick a specific area, do a deep dive, tremendous amount of research, come back and prioritize certain patents or technologies that the outside commercial companies should go after and try to either develop themselves or license it out. So I don't know if that answers your question. These programs that we have working with outside companies, I think give the students experience so when they do go out or in their current jobs or future jobs, they understand how to do primary research, which is difficult. People don't like cold calling. But when you're a graduate student and you're telling it from a top university and you reach out to an expert, let's say, and say, will you take time to talk to me about my master thesis? They get 99% of the time, they'll get the meeting. Where a McKinsey, Bain, BCG, a lot of people don't like talking to consultants who are getting paid. Our students are not looking for jobs. They're not looking for another consulting project, so they really go where the research takes them. We have another program called the Business Creation Program, which has grown tremendously. This year we have 75 teams of 5 students each. And basically, they come up with ideas of all types, shapes, and sizes. And they're, oh, there's Andre. I know Andre from Aerospace Corporation. They try to create their and commercialize their ideas across a whole bunch of sectors. 30% of the students that participate actually raise money and launch. It's a very good percentage. And for them not to launch, that's okay too, if they've done the research and know that there's not going to be a market. So I don't know if that hits your question specifically, but that's what UCLA Anderson's doing in the master thesis program here.
Great, super. Thank you very much for that, Jeff. We're now going to expand the discussion to also include NASA and the Aerospace Corporation.